Welcome to Doing the Work, a Naples Integrated Recovery podcast. My name is Brian, and this space is for anyone who's tired of surviving the same emotional and behavioral loops, whether that's anxiety, trauma, addiction, or problems in your relationships. Around here, we cut the surface level advice and sugarcoating, no platitudes or bumper sticker wisdom. We focus on clarity, responsibility, emotional discipline, and the courage to look at yourself honestly so that you can stop repeating old patterns and start living with intention instead of reaction. Let's get into it. Today I wanted to talk about something that a lot of my clients struggle with, and definitely something that was a major problem for me for years with active addiction: sleep. And for a long time in my life, sleep felt like a confrontation, that the second that my head would hit the pillow, my brain would light up. Full-on conversations being replayed in forensic detail, what I said, what I didn't say, the look on somebody's face that may have meant something, the future, tomorrow's obligations, next week's problems, scenarios that hadn't happened yet but already felt urgent, and sometimes just totally random craziness. Like, have you ever logged online and searched for one thing and then found yourself still on the internet 2 or 3 hours later with something totally unrelated, and then asked, like, how did I even get here? At the time, it didn't always feel like anxiety. Sometimes I thought that I was just being responsible or prepared or doing what, grown-ups do. They review, anticipate, try to stay ahead. And looking back, I don't know that that was entirely foresight. It was probably more like hyper-vigilance with no off-ramp. And for years, the only way that I could shut this down was with a forced shutdown, like unplugging the computer from the wall. I'm talking about my brain, though, with alcohol and sleeping pills. I mean, it's a miracle that I'm alive. I should have been dead 100 times over from what I was mixing. And I did not use any of that for an escape or for fun, but just forced unconsciousness. And that's not just a bad habit, it's a nervous system that never learned how to shut down. So if you are someone whose brain goes into overdrive the moment that the lights go out, this may not be a discipline problem. It is not because you lack insight or because you're fragile. It's because your nervous system has learned that nighttime might be the only moment that it's actually allowed to speak. Some people misunderstand what's happening here, which is why they keep fighting the wrong thing. They might think that the problem is the thoughts themselves, or anxiety, or a lack of calm, but I think that diagnosis is off. The brain is not malfunctioning. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, just at the wrong time. So here is the part that many people do not know. During the day, most adults are living in performance mode. You're responding, deciding, managing, and staying alert, and the prefrontal cortex is running the show. Stress hormones stay elevated enough to keep you functional. Emotional material doesn't disappear, it becomes postponed. And postponed is not the same thing as processed. It is delayed. And so your nervous system makes a deal with itself, like, we'll figure this out later. And then later arrives, the lights go off, input drops, and external demands have disappeared, and then the brain does what it was wired to do: review, integrate, simulate, and prepare. Systems involved in memory consolidation and future projection come online, and that is not pathological, it is adaptive. The problem is timing. If your day is packed, compressed, or vigilance heavy, then your nervous system doesn't trust that it is going to get the space that it needs, and so it hoards. It stores everything unresolved until the moment that it knows is coming, bedtime. Which could be why, for many people, these thoughts don't show up at lunch or they don't interrupt meetings. They explode when you lay down. Not because night is dangerous, but because night is finally quiet enough for you to listen and to make sense of everything. Most people respond by trying to either suppress or stop their thinking, calm themselves down. I had an ex that would count numbers until falling asleep, and for some people that may work. From a nervous system perspective, though, suppression is threat, because you're telling the system that what it's holding doesn't matter, even though it does. And threat increases arousal. Arousal increases cognitive looping. So the harder that you try to force silence, the louder it gets. And this is where I think mindfulness advice might not work for everybody, because awareness without containment doesn't regulate anything, it just exposes. When you notice every thought without giving it a place to go, then you don't end up with calm, you just get surveillance. And there's a belief underneath all of this that needs to be dismantled. If I could just calm my thoughts, I'll be able to sleep. And that sounds like a reasonable assumption, but it's wrong, because calm is not the prerequisite for sleep. Safety is. Your nervous system doesn't need your thoughts to disappear. It needs to know that the unfinished business isn't going to be lost, ignored, or punished later. So a lot of times if people are laying awake, is it lay or lie? Lying awake? Lying awake, ruminating. What's happening isn't always overthinking, it's protective rehearsal. The brain is making sure that nothing important slips through the cracks, which is why binge watching TV, guilty. I just watched like 3 seasons of White Lotus in a week. Or scrolling. I got some clients that have 12 hours of screen time a day. Not because these things calm the system, but because they drown it out. Dopamine keeps cycling, then the melatonin is delayed and sleep architecture gets fragmented, and eventually the system collapses from fatigue. This is like another one. I've traveled with my mom, and I noticed that she often is like listening to a podcast or something until she like passes out from it. And then I'll go over, I'll turn her screen off, and she's like, hey, I was listening to that. You didn't rest. You just like shut down. And that's why you wake up tired even after you're sleeping. Nighttime rumination is not the enemy. It is a signal. It's the nervous system saying, I don't trust that there's space for this anywhere else. And until that trust changes, then night is always going to feel like a fight. Once people realize that nighttime rumination isn't just random, they usually swing hard towards solutions. And this is where things can go sideways. Some people might journal. They might do breathing techniques, wind down routines, download a sleep app, Calm, you name it. And on paper, all of those are reasonable things to do, but in practice, for a lot of people, it fails, not because the tools are bad, but because of how people are using them. Your nervous system doesn't respond to intention, it responds to state. And most quote-unquote fixes are done in the wrong state. So like, let's take journaling. In theory, writing stuff down should reduce your cognitive load, but in reality, at least for me, it turns into analysis. People start solving, explaining, making sense of things, connecting dots, and that is not containment. That's mental labor. Your nervous system doesn't hear, I'm safe now. It hears, we are still working, and so arousal stays high. Containment only works when the message is clear. This isn't so important that it needs to be figured out right now. The moment that journaling becomes productive, insightful, corrective, anything like that, it stops doing its job for nighttime containment. Same with breathing. Many people don't breathe to downshift. They breathe to try to fix something. So they are inhaling deeper, forcing a long exhale. And I mean, these are the ways that you're supposed to practice a diaphragmatic breathing. But if you are monitoring whether or not it's working, then that is turning regulation into a performance task, which is also keeping your prefrontal cortex online. Meaning, you're still driving the car, you're just driving it carefully. The nervous system relaxes when it senses permission, not effort. Then there is the wind down routine problem. Most adults don't wind down, they crash. They go from stimulation straight into bed and then expect that the nervous system is just going to comply. And then when it doesn't, they think that something is wrong with them. So let me just eat a handful of Xanax or some Ambien, or wash this down with, a half pint of gin, right? Not so much. Some people may add structure or timers or rules or optimization, and a lot of those also backfire. Anytime a routine turns into a performance evaluation, did I do it right? Did it work? Why am I still awake? You are reactivating the same system that you're trying to shut off. The system becomes another demand instead of a bridge. So the purpose of a wind down ritual shouldn't be relaxation, it should be predictability. Predictability tells your nervous system what's coming next, and over time, that repetition creates safety. But only if the ritual is boring, non-productive, and unambitious. Go find a 40-year-old therapist to hang out with, and you will be tired all the time. The minute that you try to get something out of this routine, it stops working. Scrolling deserves its own moment here because people beat themselves up over it without even understanding why it's so sticky. Your phone does not calm the nervous system. It distracts it while keeping your dopamine pumping. Novelty, light, and the variable reward or the intermittent reinforcement reward from TikToks and shorts and all of that delays melatonin, and it fragments your sleep architecture, but the mind finally stops rehearsing. So it kind of feels like it's a relief, but it's a temporary relief and also costly because you're never downshifting, you're just dissociating enough to pass out. And that is why people go to sleep, but they don't feel fully restored. And let's move into self-talk, because this is one that really matters more than a lot of people realize. Most people talk to their anxious brain like it's a malfunction. Why are you doing this? Nothing is even going on. This is irrational. How come I can't shut this down? And from a nervous system standpoint, that is rejection. And rejection feels like threat. Threat increases arousal, and a system that feels threatened doesn't rest, it escalates. So, what actually works sounds underwhelming. Like, when these thoughts come up, I hear you. Or, I can see that this matters. I wrote it down, and I'm going to deal with it tomorrow. No processing, no logic, no convincing, just an acknowledgement and containment. And that message does two things at once. It validates the importance without demanding resolution, and it creates a future container so that the system doesn't feel like it has to keep watch. And this is where developmental history can show up. Nighttime rumination often forms in environments where emotional processing was postponed early. So maybe where families had, where responsibility came first, or where being composed all the time mattered, or where there wasn't room for you to slow down or maybe have a bad moment. And it's not that something traumatic needs to have happened. Even chronic pressure is enough for a nervous system to learn, stay alert, don't drop the ball, rest later. Later becomes night. And high-functioning people are especially prone to this pattern. The system worked. It kept things together. It helped you succeed. And now it's overfiring because it also never learned when to stop. So when people ask, why does my brain do this? The answer is not pathology, it's conditioning. And conditioning doesn't undo itself through insight. It changes through repeated experiences of safety and follow-through. Which brings us to a last missing piece. How you define success at night. A lot of people evaluate sleep in real time. Am I asleep yet? How long has it been? Tomorrow's going to be awful if this continues. And all of that evaluation keeps the performance loop alive. Rest exists on a spectrum. Stillness counts, muscle softening counts, slower breathing counts. And even if sleep doesn't come immediately, that autonomic tone can still shift. Have you ever had moments where you were making an effort to try to wind down and you were in that kind of twilight zone where you're not awake, you're not really asleep either, but you can feel your body resting, or maybe even like some of the involuntary twitching? So go into this with the goal of just rest, however that comes. You don't need to win the night. You don't need to fight it. And that sets up the final shift, which is changing the day so that the night doesn't have to carry everything. Because here's a part that a lot of people don't want to hear. It shifts responsibility out of night and onto day. If your brain explodes at bedtime, the problem is probably not bedtime, it's daytime. And maybe not because you're doing too much, but because there's nowhere during the day for all of that experience to land. Many adults live in a continuous state of forward motion. One task to the next. One conversation to the next. One responsibility bleeding into the next. Emotional reactions are noted, but not metabolized. And stress responses activate and then get overridden so that you're able to keep functioning. Your nervous system is usually pretty cooperative. It will let you do this, but it keeps score. And by the time that night comes, everything that you deferred wants attention all at once, which is why telling someone to relax before bed is pointless. You're asking the nervous system to process a full day's worth of unintegrated experiences in the most vulnerable state possible. So the fix is not a nighttime technique. I mean, I do teach clients good sleep hygiene, like comfortable temperature, reducing screen time, having a snack before bed, or something like that. But right now I'm going to focus on daytime off-ramps. Short, intentional pauses where nothing gets solved. No phone, no audio, no processing goals, but a few minutes where you let the system come down from activation without being redirected into the next task. So this might look like going for a walk, listening to some music. I love if I don't have consultation calls, for me to just ride home in absolute silence, without my phone open at all, just quiet. Could be taking a hot shower and just staying in that hot shower. It could be arriving home and just sitting in the car for like 2 to 5 minutes before getting greeted by your kids. The content isn't what matters, it's the interruption that does. These micro off-ramps teach your nervous system something critical. Processing doesn't have to wait until midnight. Without them, the system stays in accumulation mode all day and then it unloads at night. So another piece is how you end your day cognitively. Many people finish the evening still carrying all of their unresolved obligations, tasks that didn't get done, conversations that didn't happen, decisions that were postponed, and the nervous system doesn't experience them as abstractions, it experiences them as open loops. And an open loop creates vigilance or hypervigilance. And that is why a simple 5-minute containment practice before bed can be much more effective than any kind of a relaxation technique. Write down anything that feels unfinished, not to plan, not to optimize, just to acknowledge. And once something is captured reliably, then the brain doesn't need to rehearse it to keep it alive. So this isn't motivational psychology, it's memory management. And then there is the emotional layer that people often try to avoid. Nighttime rumination isn't just about tasks, it can also be about meaning, like regret, fear, conflict, worry about letting something important slip. And if your days are packed with responsibility and no time for reflection, all those themes don't disappear, they just wait. And then they show up when the lights go out. This is why people who might seem like they are fine all day can have like a panic attack or fall apart at night. It's not that they were fine, they were just contained by forward momentum all day. And if you remove the momentum, then everything surfaces. So the goal here is not to eliminate the process, it's to evenly distribute it. You want small doses of integration during the day so that it doesn't become a flood at night. And this also means rethinking what rest actually is. Rest is not the absence of thought, it's the absence of threat. So you can be thinking and still be at rest if your nervous system feels safe. You can be quiet and still be activated if it doesn't. This is why lying in bed, evaluating whether you're asleep yet, keeps you awake. You've turned rest into a performance metric. And the nervous system does not rest when it's under observation. So if sleep doesn't come right away, the task is not to fix it, it's to stay non-reactive. Not checking the clock, not bargaining with tomorrow, not giving yourself an internal lecture. Stillness without expectation is already a downshift, even if sleep lags behind it. And here is the final piece that matters more than any technique. If you learned early that rest was earned, delayed, or conditional, then your nervous system may not have trust in it yet. It has learned to stay awake because it was safer than relaxing. And you cannot undo that with new insights from a podcast. You undo it with repetition. Same bedtime, same containment, same wind down cues, same permission for you to stop trying and to stop carrying everything. And over time, the system learns nothing bad happens when I just stand down. That is when sleep stops feeling like a fight. Not because your thoughts all disappeared, and probably not because you mastered calm, but because vigilance finally had a place to go. So, if your brain runs tonight, it doesn't mean that you are failing. It means you are training a system that has kept you functioning for a long time. Systems don't change through force. They change through consistency, one night at a time. Thanks for spending the time with me. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with somebody who may need to hear it. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others around you. Remember that we're all doing the best that we can with the tools that we currently have, and we are all capable of growing past them. If you'd like to reach out or connect, send me an email, brian@naplesintegratedrecovery.com. I hope to hear from you there. And in the meantime, thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.